Okay, hey there. I think we're live. Hopefully we are live. Looks like we had a couple of people drop out right before I pushed the button to switch over. Hopefully we'll see those people come back. Thank you to everybody who's hanging out, waiting for this stream to start. Really appreciate you. I hope you're having a great Sunday afternoon or evening wherever you happen to be. Um, don't really know what we're going to talk about today. I've got some stuff over here just in case, um, but yeah, just thought we would jump on and say hi. Vaz says afternoon sound and video check. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Vaz. Appreciate it. Always like to make sure the audio and video are sounding and looking as good as I can have them. I switched back over to the wireless lav mic for right now. I've got my overhead mic, my shotgun mic up here, but I'm sitting today versus standing, and I just don't get quite the same distance there if I'm sitting down. And I just didn't feel like standing today. Just having one of those days, you know. Had a great weekend last weekend up in Denver for my 10-year anniversary with the wife. Had a great time up there, and they got home, and it was just I don't know, just something. The last couple of days has had me a little off, and I hope maybe chatting with you guys today will help me kind of get out of that funk a little bit. Let's see. Grish Lab says 5 out of 5. Glad to hear it. Thank you for that. I was about to drop out and come back at 10 p.m. Did I publish the time wrong, Jordan T2? It's entirely possible that I've done some ignorant stuff like that. Video and sound received nice and clear in Norway, says Sven. Glad to have you here. Not Kudu says hi. Glad to have you as well. Ashton Duncan says hello, tech community. Well, thank you for joining, Ashton Duncan. Glad to have you here as well. Yeah, so just kind of, we got Lemon Zest here. We got Jason Budney. Glad to see some more familiar faces as well as some new ones today. Had a bunch of new people join the community over the last month or so. So glad to have some new faces here. Noodles says greetings with a great little smiley face there. Glad to have you as well. Yeah, I obviously I didn't put out much content this week. Was just kind of catching up from being out over the weekend and getting back into the swing of things and getting caught up on some things after being gone for a few days. So hopefully this week I'll be able to put out a bit more content. So yeah, the Olive is here. Glad to have you, Olive Llama. So yeah, that's I don't know, man. I'm struggling today, and I don't know why. The last couple of days have been a little rough on my mental health, and I'm not entirely sure what happened there. So yeah, we're gonna try to get through this. Mindbend is here. Glad to have you here. I think over the next little bit, I'm going to try to do a better balance of the content that I release. I think I wanted to just get that out there. I know that I've kind of gone hard and heavy with some of the news stuff, and I think part of the reason for that is that I've had a hard time recently finding things to talk about in the self-host community that isn't news related. One of the issues that I keep running up against when it comes to talking about self-hosting apps and self-hosting related things is that the community, the open source community, really seems to be inundated, overloaded, whatever, with apps that are very much geared towards whoever created the app. And I know that's how a lot of apps start out. Somebody creates an app that suits their need, or that's the way it's been for a long time anyway. And that's always been kind of the foundational thing of creating a self-hosted app or sharing an app with the self-hosting community is building something to suit the need of a particular user, and then getting feedback from the community, and then that app growing and developing and becoming something that that is more than just um, than just the use case for that one individual, right? So other people will contribute, other people will have things to say about it, but they will offer their thoughts on a certain thing. And what I feel like I've noticed over the past few months anyway, and please tell me one way or the other if you're seeing the same thing. And I think some people are getting ahead of me, and I'm with you. But I want to get this out there just so that I can kind of get my head straight around this thought, right? Somebody now creates an app. Somebody goes to something like Claude Code and says, "Hey, I want an app that does X, Y, or Z." And Claude Code is brilliant, does a really good job, creates that app. The app gets then uploaded to ForJO or GitHub or whatever, right? And then that user who has created that app, who has no developing background or understanding of the code that they've released, then has this app that they've released into the wild, that suits their needs perfectly. But because they don't know how to then incorporate other features into that app, the app doesn't get any updates or any support or anything, right? So then somebody else takes the idea for that app, says, "Hey, Claude Code, I like this app, but I want it to do this thing over here instead." So then we get a version 2 of that app, and then somebody else is like, "Hey, I like the way these two apps work, but I want it to do this other thing." So Claude Code then generates a third version of that app. And I feel like that is the way the self-hosting community has been going for a little bit. And maybe it's just me feeling jaded or something. I don't know. But it very much seems like that's what's happening, because we just keep getting the same app over and over and over and over again. And it's 5 or 10 different apps, but it's a new note-taking app. It's a new file sharing app. It's a new secret sharing app, or something similar to that. Or it's a new, "Hey, look, I can manage, or I can keep track of all of my network stuff here, whether it's apps and ports and IP addresses and that sort of thing." And I just feel like we keep seeing these same types of apps over and over and over again. And kind of like what Jason said, yeah, the wheel just keeps getting reinvented and apps are getting boring. I think that's a really good summation of kind of how I feel. And that makes it difficult as somebody whose entire channel was built on finding an app that was created and discovering that app and digging through it and getting familiar with the app so that I can then share it with a community of like-minded individuals. That's getting harder and harder and harder to do because of the influx, the inundation that we're seeing of apps being regurgitated over and over and over with moderate iterations. And I feel like that's kind of where things are headed. Why would the person who created the first version of the app do anything to make the app more accessible to other people when persons 2, 3, and 4 can iterate on it themselves with something like Claude Code to create their own version of somebody else's idea. And I feel like we're gonna keep seeing that for a really long time. And I'm super bummed about that, if I'm being completely honest. And I think that's part of it, as I've been reflecting on that over the past week or so, with what I'm seeing. And I want to continue to create content. I love creating content. I love the entire process of doing research and putting my thoughts together and coming out here and sitting down or standing up, however I'm feeling on a given day, and and talking about the app and giving a demonstration of the app, and then talking about how to install the app, talking about the nuances of the app or the installation process. And one of the other things that I'm seeing as I go through a lot of these, and it's not all of the time, obviously, but I'll see something like, say, in the self-host newsletter, where it's an app about, doesn't even matter what the app's about, where I'll go follow the instructions. I'll go to the GitHub repository. I'll clone the repository. I'll change into the directory for that cloned repository. I'll copy the env example over to the env file, modify what needs to be modified, and click deploy, and just get nothing but errors in my container logs. And I feel like it doesn't do anyone any good to report those errors to the developers, because they weren't, and I say developers with air quotes, because they're though a lot of these people are relying strictly on AI to build these apps, and they don't understand what that error means. And they can't reproduce it because they've got 100 different dependencies installed on their system from all of the testing of other things that they were doing. So when the app doesn't work on somebody else's machine, they can't troubleshoot it because they don't know what dependency is missing. So I'm frustrated, I think. I'm frustrated with the idea that now anybody can create an app that suits their needs that will never get an update or any kind of support. And I feel like it's diluting the waters, so to speak. Mindman brings up an interesting topic of the thing with AI coding is, why did the programmer even learn it at all? Kind of. I actually read a thing last night. I couldn't sleep last night, which is weird because I'm on some pretty decent meds to help me sleep, and I couldn't sleep last night. So I was scrolling, and I saw something that was talking about even seasoned developers are losing their edge and the things that they used to be really good at. They're losing those things, their sharpness in those skills, because even they are starting to rely on AI to do a lot of the coding for them. So they're losing their sharpness and their I can't think of the word. They're losing their ability to do their job because they're becoming dependent on AI to do their job for them. And we're talking about seasoned developers who are having this issue happen. And I think that's unfortunate. Like, while I understand that AI can be a great thing in the right hands of a seasoned developer who can build something great, because they can let AI take care of the minutia, or the big chunks of it, not the minutia, the big chunks of it, and then they can go back and kind of fill in the minutia parts, right? I'm I guess I'm frustrated with all of it because of everything that I've just mentioned. Practical IT, Jeremy says, hello from Michigan. Glad to have you here, man. Trojan Horse says hello from South Africa. Jason says, I agree, between the app stagnation and hardware apocalypse, it's a rough time in Homelabbing. And that's just it, right? Like I've got a PC, I've got a NAS over here that I haven't reviewed yet because tech is ridiculously expensive because of the aforementioned AI nonsense. And it sucks. It sucks for everybody. You know, it's not just me as a creator who deals with this. It's people who just want to buy a piece of hardware that can't anymore because the prices have shot up so much that it's hard to justify it. And even as a direct result of that, even secondhand Homelab hardware is going up in price on, secondhand sites like eBay and those sorts of things. And that sucks. It sucks that prices everywhere are going up because of something that nobody actually asked for. So So I've been perseverating on that quite a bit over the last week or so, and I think I've let it kind of get to me more than I'm happy not even talking about. I'm letting it get to me more than I wish it would. So yeah, we got Peter here, says hello from Montreal. Nighthawk is here. Glad to have you, man. Practical IT says, or Jeremy says, AI is great for great proof of concept or minimum viable product, but it all comes down to how you use AI, in my opinion. I think that's a good way to put it. Like, I think if somebody has an idea for an app, you know, somebody who's not a developer, has got an idea for an app, I think it's a great way to put together a proof of concept, like Jeremy said there. But to try to put together a full app and just use the meme of, telling AI, hey, build this app, don't make any mistakes, is kind of, I think, the approach a lot of people are taking. And look, Claude Code is brilliant. It does some really, really great coding very, very quickly. But if you can't support the app, I don't feel like you should be releasing it into the wild. And that is my opinion. Like, again, I created a game with AI a while back, and made a video about it. Like we've talked about this. Make sure this is turned down because it's annoying otherwise. Like I made a video about this app that I created, right? And it's just a fun little thing that doesn't, this is it. This is all it does. But I didn't build it. I can't support it. So I didn't release it on GitHub. I think I shared it with a couple of people who might have been interested in it. But I wasn't comfortable releasing this on GitHub, because I can't support it. And I feel like that's the approach that more people should take. If you can't support the app that you had AI create, don't release it into the wild, because you don't know what it might do. Because just telling AI not to make mistakes doesn't cut it, in my opinion. So let's see. Trojan Moore says, I spent the last week trying to get a secondhand laptop for someone that needs it for work and studies. It isn't great. The shops here are riding the wave of not knowing, but yeah, it sucks. Like, if you can't, and because of AI, because of the tech apocalypse that's going on, prices on tech are up across the board. Like I've been wanting to get a Mac M4 Mini. I was going to put it on my Best Buy credit card, and Best Buy just doesn't carry them anymore, at least not in my area. I have looked repeatedly, and it looks like some of the different versions are just out, or are not being created or made anymore, like the 256 gig model. They're just unavailable across the board. And that blows my mind that even popular tech isn't available anymore. Like, just unavailable, sold out. And that's on both of these. These are both unavailable, not just sold out, but unavailable. Blows my mind. Other stuff is available, obviously, like we can see here. But this isn't what I'm interested in, right? I'm interested in the Mac M4, and I can't get one locally, and that sucks. Say Trojan says, I spent the last 2 years working on a project for myself. In the last 5 months or so, I started adding AI to the workflow. I'm attached. The rest of it I feel to throw away. Forsaken says, what's going down? Make your own URL and distro it there. That's just it. I don't want to, like this is just a dumb game. Like, you could go to this URL and just download it, right? Like, you could just go to the source code. Oops, can't see my screen. You can just go to the source code and download all of this, and you'd have your own copy of it at game@dbtechreviews.com. So yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily want to release something that I'm not comfortable with. I don't know the code. Like, the code's fairly human readable. If you've done any coding, but I haven't done enough to feel comfortable in saying that I know exactly what every line does. So I don't want to release it, because again, I don't know what it's going to do if somebody plays it on a different browser or whatever, right? I know I'm being a little overly sensitive about it, but it's not. I don't feel like it's my code to release, So I don't know. That says all the 256 gig models have been discontinued by Apple. Cool. Still can't get a hold of a 512 gig either. I would have been fine with that, but those aren't available either. Nighthawk says I've built an app with AI and is truly local, and I work on it weekly using AI. I have Copilot GitHub helping with the code, and then I use Qwen25 Coder 3B to read over the code and verify. And if that works for you, man, then that's awesome. In fact, it wasn't the game that I sent to somebody. It was the network app that I had AI build because I was curious, that I actually think I sent to Nighthawk. I don't know what you ever did with it or if you ever messed with it, but it was just a network visualization tool. They kind of did a tree system based on, like hardware and then VMs and then like LXCs and all that stuff. It kind of broke it all out so that you could have kind of a tree system showing where everything was. Jeremy says Apple is letting the M4 stock run out ahead of the M5 Mini launch, rumored for the WWDC in June. That makes sense. It sucks, but it makes sense. The shortage is all over. Even the 512 models over here went from 1 week delivery to 2-month delivery directly from Apple. Man. Sorry, there's a fly bugging me over here. Jason says I wouldn't release it either. Yeah, I don't plan on it. Nighthawk says I tried to build it and make an image and then deploy the compose stack, but I couldn't get it to work for me. Interesting. And again, and that's just it, right? I think that's what's happening a lot with some of these apps that I've tried to deploy, like what I found in the self-host newsletter, where it's like, it starts the process and then it throws an error. And I don't even think it's worth reaching out to the developer to be like, hey, I got this error, because they're not going to know how to fix that error, because they're going to have to send it to AI, and then AI is going to have to provide a possible solution. And then they're going to it's a real shit show, It can fly, man. I wish it would not. Jeremiah says, I'm a new subscriber. I'll show you my Homelab. I'm working on it. Yeah, definitely send that over. I've been wanting to do more live streams of featuring Homelabs. I think that would be a lot of fun. We've done a couple of them. We showed Collins's last week. Last month we did like 4, I think. Would love to see some more that we can do. Hopefully by the end of the month. I need to do some more advertising, but guess we still got 2 weeks. We got 5 Sundays this month. Holy cow. So yeah. Let's see. Will you be doing more OMV 8, and will you show us paperless NGX with database and backups on it? I don't know if I'm going to do any more of the OpenMedia Vault 8 stuff. And the reason for that is that OpenMedia Vault 8 is such a niche within a niche, right? Like self-hosting on its own is its own specific niche of content. But OpenMedia Vault, I feel like to some degree has fallen out of favor for just installing, Debian or Ubuntu and throwing, apps on bare metal or Docker directly without that intermediate layer of OpenMedia Vault. And that sucks. Excuse me. That sucks a lot, because this channel was started on OpenMedia Vault. Like the first year of content, everything I did was on OpenMedia Vault 5. And then OpenMedia Vault 6 came out, and it was such a bag of trash. And I made a video about how much I hated OpenMedia Vault 6. And then OpenMedia Vault 7 came out, and they fixed a bunch of the stuff that I talked about in my "What Are You Doing" with regards to Open Media Vault 6. And Open Media Vault 8 is just 7 on Debian 13. There isn't really anything different about Open Media Vault 8. And that's... I don't know that Open Media Vault 8 should be Open Media Vault 8. I feel like it should be Open Media Vault 7.5. Just because it is 7, it is Open Media Vault 8 is Open Media Vault 7, but on Debian 13. I know there's a couple of little fixes in there, but I don't know that it was different enough or enough of an actual upgrade to OMV to be a full version release, except for the underlying Debian release. I think it should have been Open Media Vault 7.5. That is my opinion on it. After having spent some time with it, there's effectively no difference between 7 and 8, other than the underlying operating system. I know there are little tweaks here and there, but I don't think it's enough to be a full version release. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, sorry. Jason says, I'm still trying to figure out running AI on my M4. I found the LM Studio didn't have the latest models and ran slow and not as reliable. That sucks, man. I hope you get something sorted there. Let's see. I don't care for Open Media Vault, any version. I never used OMV because all I heard was bad things about it. I think 5 was the last. Like, I feel like Open Media Vault 5 was the XP of OMV. Like, I really like, or even 7, like Windows XP or Windows 7 were both great releases, right? And then it was just bags of garbage surrounding it. And I kind of feel like that's how Open Media Vault has been. 5 was great. 5 did a lot of things really, really well. And then they just kind of shit the bed on 6. They made it a little bit better on 7. And then they just re-released 7 and called it 8. Glenn says, well, can you do an everything and the kitchen sink video before fully stepping away? The problem with that, I'm not saying no. The problem with doing an everything in the kitchen sink kind of video is that it doesn't actually appeal to many people, right? There's a million things that I could talk about with a video like that, but none of it's going to be anything that's actually helpful to the masses. And as much as I understand that it might be helpful for a few people, if I release a video that only appeals to a few people, only a few people will watch it. And the problem with that, it's not even necessarily about the views. It's not about the money or the subscribers. It's about the way YouTube has a tendency to punish creators for putting out videos that get low views. I can only speak from my experience with this. I can't, there's nothing definite provable out there because of how tight-lipped YouTube and Google are about their algorithms for lots of reasons that while I hate it, I understand. If you put out a low-performing video, YouTube is less likely to recommend your next video. That has been my experience anyway. And that makes it hard for me to make a video that I know is going to perform poorly. And I know that sucks for people who are looking forward to that content, but if I make a video that only appeals to 5 people, and I know 5 is an arbitrary, deliberately low number, then there's a better chance that YouTube's only going to show my next video to 5 people. And it makes it harder for a channel to keep momentum going if I release a video that I know will do poorly. This fucking fly, man. Um, you got me. See, Jordan T says you got me into OMV initially on my Raspberry Pi 4. Still use it today, just as a Proxmox VM with a GPU pass-through and 30 terabytes of Plex media. That's pretty impressive, man. I'm glad it's still working for you, because like there's a lot of great things about it. Like it's a great NAS software, right? If you don't want the overhead of Unraid or TrueNAS or whatever Synology's got on their stuff or what TerraMaster's got on their stuff. If you want something very, very basic, Open Media Vault is a great solution. But the problem is that Open Media Vault 6, 7, and 8 are limited iterations of the previous version. So most everything that I made in my Open Media Vault 5 videos more or less still applies to Open Media Vault 6 and Open Media Vault 7 and Open Media Vault 8. The way you would install, Open Media Vault 7 and 8 have their own Docker Compose dashboard that I hate. I think it's absolute trash. I would rather use something like Portainer than the Docker Compose dashboard that Open Media Vault has. And when I mentioned that in a video, I really hurt someone's feelings because apparently it's gotten a lot better, and I really should give it another look. And I just don't think I can do that. I've spent too much time with Open Media Vault to believe that they have done something innovative. And even so far as that, like I've switched away from Portainer for the most part as well. I've got a video coming up about that. I've got a script mostly finished about stepping away from using Portainer in my Homelab and using something else instead of that. And I've got a video that I'm kind of working on this script on right now. Olive says, "Do you own a Jetson?" I do not. I've thought a Jetson would be an interesting piece of hardware to mess with, but I've never bothered to get one. Trojan says, "I'm working on a project and need to get myself a VPS or VMs. Those are very different things. I've been using Vultr. I'm not sure if I'm getting the best deals. Any advice or suggestions on something for under $5 a month?" Hold on. Give me a second here. I may have something, but the thing is that you've got to do kind of a yearly thing. Let me see if my brain is not doing well today, so give me a second to find it. Well, it's not in there. It's definitely not going to be there or there. Hold on, I'm looking. Stop. Guess I need to go back a little farther. Let me see if I can find it. That's really weird. What the heck? Studio. I didn't think I had taken it out. Man, I can't think of RackNerd. Check out RackNerd. Yeah, thank you, Dualtima. That's what I was looking for. I've actually got here's my affiliate page for VPS hosting that ends up being about $10 a year on their lower models, or there's other options there that you can take a look at, for whatever it is you're looking here. RackNerd has been great. They've been great to work with. You can get four cores, 4 gigs of RAM for like $40 a year. In fact, I think they've actually even got. Oh damn! Apparently, I need to update this. Man, yep, I know I need to fix all of that. That sucks, man. Anyway, RackNerd, if you're looking for a good VPS, a KVM VPS, reveal deals. Yeah, so looks like they've updated their pricing. That sucks. It didn't used to be that much. Looks like they changed that. And I don't think I got a notification. Usually I get a notification that because usually they'll send out a notification saying, hey, we've changed this, and I need to update that a little bit. Let's see. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, RackNerd is what I would definitely recommend for something like that. I used them for a while when I was self-hosting Pangolin. I used these guys as my remote for that. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's way more than it used to be. Look, still great prices comparatively. Man, where did they go? RackNerd, there we go. Reveal deals, see dedicated servers. Yeah, I feel like those prices are way up. Again, still not virtual private servers, C plans. Yeah, it's $17 a month. But if you go to the reveal deals, view plans and pricing, yeah, I feel like these prices are way up from what they were. And that sucks quite a bit because it used to be like literally like $12 a year or $11 a year for the 1 gig plan. And now the 1 gig plan is $22 a year, which again, look, is what, like $1.50 a month or something, which is still great. But those prices are definitely up. I'm going to have to look into that a little bit, I think. Let's see. Jeremy says, spot on with the low performing video comment. Yeah, I thought I wasn't crazy on that, but I'm glad to have another creator here who can validate that for me. When sticking to the trifecta of Proxmox OMV backup as my main content topics. What I have found with that, and I think it's less likely to happen with the stuff that you're talking about there, Jeremy. For the last 5, almost 6 years now, roughly, I've been the Docker container guy, and that's been fine, except that lately it hasn't been. Except that the issue that I ran into was that I pigeonholed myself into being the Docker container guy. And when I release content that isn't that, very often I get people in the comments that are upset that I'm not talking about Docker containers. I'm not talking about a self-hosted app. I'm talking about something else. And that is definitely something that I have done to myself. By mostly just creating content about those specific things. That is now what everybody expects of me. And I say everybody loosely, right? Not everybody, but and I don't want to be pigeonholed into a specific niche topic topic of content or whatever. I want to be able to diversify what I talk about a little bit without going too crazy, like I know I have over the last 6 weeks or so. Um, so, um, so that's why I've been trying to find other things to talk about on the channel. And I know that the news cycle stuff, was good at first and then fell off. And I understand why. And I think I'm trying to work on a solution for that. Cause I released a couple of videos about, like the router ban, and the Euro Office, LibreOffice stuff. And those videos did really well. And I was like, well, I will diversify a little bit more and talk about some of the hack stuff that's been going on. And the hack videos kind of took the forefront of the content that I've been putting out lately. And those videos don't do well, compared to, Euro Office, only Office, router ban. They're very different audiences, and I need to stick with, the Euro Office, router bans type of stuff that directly affects home labbing and self-hosting directly. Whereas the hacks definitely do to a certain degree, but the level of interest in that is lower because it's farther up the chain than hey, your router, it may be harder to buy a decent router in the next couple of years because of things going on. Those are very different. Those are very different people looking at those things, and it took me a little while to realize that. So I'm working on trying to focus more on those sorts of things, in addition to when I can find a good self-hosted app or a topic to talk about. It's I'm trying to figure that out a little bit still, but I needed to see what the boundary was, right? Like I don't know if I don't know, and the only way to find out what that is to keep pushing it until it's like, okay, that was the line. Now we got to back up and stay within these boundaries. And I think I've got that figured out. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what's going on. But as far as like the content about, this thing got hacked or that thing got hacked, if it's TrueNAS got hacked, I'll make that video. If it's Unraid got hacked, I'll make that video. I'm not saying they did. I'm just saying if something like that came up in the news cycle, I would make a video about that. If something directly tied to one of those types of things got hacked, I would make a video about that. But as far as, some random JavaScript library organization got hacked, that is less likely to be interesting to the self-hosting community. So, so again, I'm trying to figure out. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, that was really cold. I needed that. So yeah, again, I think I've spent the last few weeks figuring some things out, and hopefully I can. Hopefully I can do something with that information that I've got. Noodles asks an interesting question. What if you whipped up a second channel, say DB Tech Insider, and posted those videos there? Would they impact your main channel's algorithm? I don't think so. I don't think so. But it's an interesting idea, right? It genuinely is. I don't necessarily hate that because it would still give me the opportunity to create those types of content or those content pieces without necessarily affecting the main channel. That's an interesting idea. I may have to give that a thought, Noodles. Thank you for bringing that up. And Glenn asked the same question about a sub channel. That's yeah, no, I appreciate that, Noodles. I really do. I appreciate you looking out for me there. Because I do want to create the content. I don't know. I'll have to figure something out. My concern is this, right? just over a year ago, I started something called Homelab Launchpad, where I was going to kind of start at the foundation of self-hosting and build up from there. And then I realized that I was just going to end up rebuilding my existing channel all over again. And I kind of feel like a dick for having done that, because I had some aspirations. And then once I really started to think about it, I was like, oh yeah, no, this is just going to be DB Tech 2.0. And I'm not actually going to be doing anything new or original that is going to be different enough from what I'm already doing to make it matter. And I really genuinely kind of feel like a dick for having done that, because I didn't put enough thought into it. So I'm going to have to put some thought into this. In fact, I'm going to open Obsidian, and I'm going to leave myself a little note here. I come over to here, a new note. Tech. Oops, if I could type insider channel. Just copying some stuff. Just copying some stuff so I've got some notes so that I can come into this with a clearer head and that sort of thing. Yep. Okay, sorry. So Forsaken says DB Tech Cyber News. I was listening, but not fully. Something like that. Yeah. As far as being able to create that sort of news content without it having a direct effect or impact or whatever on the main channel, but still give me a chance to talk about some of this stuff. It's an idea. It's definitely an idea. I'll have to think about how I want to approach that. Let's see. One for simple people like me and not for advanced. Jekyll 56, that was kind of the idea behind Homelab Launchpad. It genuinely was. But I found myself falling into the same presentation style as what I do on the main channel, and it wasn't going to be different enough to make it worth separating out from DB Tech into Homelab Launchpad. So that's why it kind of fell apart in my brain, was that I wanted to do it. I wanted to do the simple thing, but I just found myself falling back into the same styles of things. Let's see. Some collabs with the devs that you invite them, maybe. That's a good idea. I actually did something similar to that on this channel early last year. Like with Papra, with a couple of different apps. I had the devs create a little clip that introduced themselves, and I thought that was an interesting way to do that. But what I learned quickly, so I used to be a front-end developer. I used to build like website front ends for like WordPress and Joomla and Drupal, those sorts of things. And I did that in large part because I liked writing that style of code. I enjoyed creating things, but I didn't necessarily want to talk to people, right? I wanted a designer to give me a Photoshop file with an interface or an interface layout and just say, here, create this. And that's what I wanted to do. And I think that the developers very much get into developing so that they don't have to talk to people, because they don't want to talk to people. They're not good at talking to people. These are all separate statements. Some developers are brilliant at being on camera and talking to people and those sorts of things. Others aren't. Just like I'm good at some things and I'm not good at other things. I think that's true with everybody, right? Um, but getting a developer on camera can be difficult sometimes. Not always, but sometimes it can be very difficult to get a developer on camera because they're very uncomfortable being on camera. Um, and so that kind of made it difficult to continue the momentum of having devs come on and talk about their apps and that sort of thing. So I'm not sure how it would be to get devs on camera to talk about, hey, this app got hacked, this thing went bad. I think people in those sorts of situations are more likely to be interested in fixing the issue than being on camera to talk about the issue. So I don't know. YouTube said my comment was too long, but essentially you could do a post on the main channel, pointing to new videos on the second channel. That's actually kind of what I did initially on Homelab Launchpad, but it's definitely a good idea for cross-posting. Trojan Moore says, I'm curious, how hard was it starting a YouTube channel? I would love to know the point that made you start the channel. So that's an interesting topic. Years and years ago, I made a video about an issue that I was having. Let me see if I can find it. Let me open this up. Let's view this on YouTube. All right, let's switch over to here. Oops, let's hold on. I'm gonna do this. So when was this? This was April 7th of 2015. I created a video about an issue that I was having with a Fitbit. You can see this was 11. Gosh, when was this? April 7th. So this was 11 years ago. I made this video about an issue I was having. Oops. With my Fitbit, right? This was like the first generation Fitbit, and the band was peeling. And so I made this video for warranty purposes, right? I was like, here, look, this is what's happening. And I made this 3-minute video that I sent to Fitbit to say, hey, look, I'm having this issue with my Fitbit. I need to do a warranty replacement on this. And then 303,000 people watched the video. And then it was like, oh, well, that's an interesting thing. So I made another video about a month later. It was an update. You can see my video quality is a little better here. That sort of thing. And 55,000 people watched that video. And then I started realizing, oh, hey, people will pay attention if it's a topic that interests people, which I know is a dumb thing to say, but I briefly had an office space. I actually still have these shelves. But my plan with that was never to make content. My initial thing was like, hey, I'm just going to make this video so that Fitbit can see the issue that I'm having. And it just kind of grew from there. Once I started getting into the idea of getting familiar and comfortable with creating content, I wanted to be, the next, hold on, Nubis. Sorry, cat was out in the garage screaming. I wanted to be the next Linus or the next Jay or the next Bitwit. I think he was going by Awesome Sauce at the time. I wanted to do that kind of thing. I wanted to create tech content. So I spent a long, long time creating content about stuff that no one cared about. Like if we go way, way back, you can't see this right now. I don't even know if I can go back that far quickly, Man, I reviewed quadcopters and I reviewed techie flashlights and I reviewed anything that anybody would send me for a really long time because I wanted to get into creating content more consistently. That was kind of my goal. And then that was kind of like 2015. And then in 2016, I got really, really sick. I was hospitalized for 6 months. I was in 4 medically induced comas. I was intubated 3 or 4 times. I was trached twice, where they had to cut a hole in my throat and put me on a ventilator. I had that happen twice. So when I got out of the hospital, or while I was in the hospital, I had to learn how to talk again. Like my brain knew how, but I had to teach my throat and my voice, my vocal cords. I had to teach all of this to work all over again. So my speech therapists would come in with, a USB drive. Pitch this to me, sell me on this, review this for me. They would do that kind of thing. So when I got out of the hospital and I started getting to a point where I could create content again, part of it was because I was training my voice still. Like if you look at the actual, like when I'm editing videos, you can see the cadence to my voice in the audio track. And that's because I had to learn to talk differently. I had to learn how to breathe differently when I'm talking. Because while all of that was happening, I lost 1/3 of my lungs. So I don't get the full breath that I used to. So I have to pace my talking differently. So when I got back into creating content, it was part of it, a good chunk of it anyway, initially was to strengthen my voice and my ability to talk. And then one day I was like, we were broke. Like we were broke. Couldn't afford Netflix anymore. And I still needed a way to have streaming media for the kid who was autistic and very much relies on his shows and his movies and those sorts of things. And we were very much a Netflix family at that point. But we couldn't afford it anymore. So I had to figure out a way to keep that going. And I was like, oh, well, with Open Media Vault 4, I can install Plex with a plugin, and then he can have his movies and his TV shows, and we can have the same and that sort of thing. So I made a video about that. And then shortly, within a few days, learned that was wrong. I should have done it with Docker, and started learning about Docker because of somebody on Reddit. So I took that same video idea, and rather than installing it on Open Media Vault 4, which was on its way out because Open Media Vault 5 had just come out, I started learning about Docker, and I started learning about Open Media Vault, and I started learning about those sorts of things. So I made a video about installing Plex on Open Media Vault 5 via Docker. And I didn't know anything about Docker when I made that video. Like I was still very, very fresh. And my first video about Docker was Plex. And that was dumb, but it forced me to learn it. It forced me to get into a place where I had to learn it so that I could explain it. So I installed Plex over and over and over and over and over again and figured out every little nuance that I could. And I still didn't understand what all of the things in the Docker Compose meant. I didn't know all of the minutia of a Docker Compose, but I was like, here are the steps to follow to get this to work. And I made that video. And that video did pretty well, all things considered, with a newish channel. And that's kind of how I got started talking about Docker and self-hosting and Open Media Vault and those sorts of things. I was hospitalized. I actually flatlined a couple of times. Hey, Heathers, I don't know what that was, but thank you. I don't know. Sent flow state. I don't know what that is, but thank you very much for sending it. That's cool. I've never had somebody send a gift before, so I don't know what that is, but thank you for sending that. 200 jewels. You're literally the first person to ever send me jewels. I don't know what they are, but I've seen them. Thank you. So yeah. So that was kind of how I got into creating content. Initially, it was like, hey, I'm having this issue. This is a warranty thing. And then there was like, hey, I figured out how to install this Plex thing. Let's make a video about that. And in the in between time, I made a lot of junk videos about flashlights and quadcopters and nonsense tech things, headphones, so many headphones. But yeah, so that's how I got started into creating content. The hardest part about creating a new YouTube channel is pressing record. Because your first videos are going to be garbage. Unless you're a naturally talented presenter and speaker, your first videos are going to be garbage. Hell, most of mine are still garbage to a certain degree. And I'm always trying to make things better. And I try to compensate with, fixing my lighting or changing my camera, those sorts of things. Not because they'll make the presentation better, but because it reinvigorates me to try again. So yeah, the hardest part, honestly, is pressing record. You don't need a DSLR. You don't need a shotgun microphone. Like, you don't need those things. Like, simply a phone is everything you need to record a video. It's really just that simple. Lean it against something, make sure your framing is good, press record, and off you go. And just keep doing it until you figure out what works for you. So yeah, that's what I guess I have to say about that. Let me scroll back up because I know I missed some stuff. Glenn went and got lunch. Glad to do that. Jordan says, I think I've heard you mention gaming PCs in the past. How about a series showing how to create a gaming VM with GPU pass-through and access it via Moonlight streaming? Again, that's kind of a one-off video. And Techno-Tim did that already. And I'm not saying I couldn't. Like, I've got the hardware back here in the HL15. It's got a GPU in it that I could probably do that sort of stuff with. Again, it's a one-off video that I think, because of the tech issues that we're having right now about getting GPUs and getting different things, I don't know that it would do well. Again, I appreciate the idea. I'm not saying no. It's just right now it's hard to get a GPU at a reasonable price. And like what I've got in there is an NVIDIA GPU, which are even harder to get than AMD GPUs. So many letters right there that almost confused me. So I would have to get another AMD GPU, I think, to make that. It would have to be like a kind of a two-part. Here's how to do it with NVIDIA. Here's how to do it with AMD. I don't know, maybe. You could even compare it to gaming on bare metal installations and see if the overhead affects the frame rates. It would be interesting. I think the biggest thing that people would notice in a situation like that wouldn't be frame rates as much as latency. Doing it over Wi-Fi, via over Ethernet. Are we doing it on a 1 gig connection, on a 2.5 gig, a 5, a 10 gig connection? There's lots of different things that would play into latency and that sort of thing. And I don't have the ability to measure latency the way a lot of people, like Linus Tech Tips has an entire team that does latency, basically, and I don't have the technical proficiency to be able to measure those things effectively. Jekyll says, I died 3 times and I'm lucky to be here. Yeah, you are. You got me beat. I think I only technically died twice in 2016. So you got me beat. But I'm glad we're both still here. Trojan says, "Man, I love these stories. AI remove this. We need this, and it's the reason we connect the way we do." I agree with that. You deserve the success and opportunities that come with it. Well, I appreciate that. I really do. Jordan says, "Jacqueline, glad to have you and DB Tech are still with us." Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad we're both here too. Going back to the tokens or whatever, the gems. Hey, Heather says, "I don't know either. They just said I could gift them." Well, thank you. Jason brings up a good point. The craft computing is a great source for GPU pass-through and VM gaming and that sort of thing. I agree. Glenn says, "I thought about doing a video on stream of a highway driving, but decided against it." Sometimes, a good, especially with you doing long haul trucking, you could set up a GoPro. I've got a GoPro right here that I've got to get some parts for. That's a whole separate thing. But you could set up a GoPro and get some great, cross country footage, or, going down I-70 footage, or those sorts of things that might do well. Put some good ambient music over it. I think it might do well. I don't know that I would do a stream. I think I might do like a dedicated video, but yeah, it might do well. Those kinds of videos often do well. Yeah, Voice of Grog, you're right. I need to update. I need to update all of this stuff on my website. I mentioned earlier that unfortunately, I didn't get a notification that they had changed their pricing and everything. Because usually I do, and then I update it when I get that. I don't remember getting one, though I may have. That said, I may still get the affiliate if you click one of those and go buy something anyway. I think they've got an affiliate tag in them that would give me credit. I think. I don't know that for sure. But yeah, definitely check that out. You guys hurt my feelings. Just kidding. I'm an 80s baby. Yeah, dude, I get you. Growing up in the 80s was a wild time. 80s and 90s were definitely something different than what we've seen over the last little bit. But in fairness, like what our parents saw in the 60s and 70s was different than what we saw. It's definitely a succession of things that have changed. Let's see here. Oh, nice. But yeah, so I don't know, man. Like I said, I'm trying to figure out what my next endeavor with content will be. I know we're kind of switching back and forth here, but I definitely want to keep creating content that is relevant to self-hosting. Obviously that's what we're here for, but I think finding the right content that isn't just, something else that somebody has shit out via AI that'll never get an update. I get a lot of emails from people about, hey, look at this thing that I created, and their documentation sucks, and the app is half-assed. And it's not all of them, but I get a lot of those types of emails of people that are trying to produce something via AI, and it's very, very clearly AI. So yeah, I don't know, man. I got to figure it out, and I'll have to figure out what kind of things to cover, what topics, what works, what doesn't work. I think I figured out recently what doesn't work. So I just got to keep my eyes out for topics that I think will work. Let's see. Vaz says, "Excuse me, our parents in the 70s. I'm from the 70s. Stop making me feel old, if you please." Yeah, I was born in 81. My parents were born in the early 60s. Glenn says, "I graduated in 84. The late 70s were wild for a little kid." Yeah. I believe that. I remember, like late 80s, early 90s were pretty wild even then. I can't imagine what the 70s were like. My trip started in the 75. Seen lots of changes in the world, and most don't be for the right direction. And sadly, there's been a lot of changes that haven't gone the way we would hope them to. And I wish I had answers that would solve a lot of that, but I just don't. Um, do you find a lot of people are always trying to monetize with the tools that they're building, or are some building for the community? Given with the AI right now, I think there's a bit of both. I truly believe there's a bit of both. And I always hope that it's the right people trying to monetize. Somebody sent me something this morning. I get a lot of people sending me stuff like, "Hey, we'd really like you to take a look at this and share it with the community, and we're willing to give you a lifetime license in exchange." And I don't usually touch those, um, because I know that it won't be well received. I know that there's a lot of software out there that does both, that is well received. Um, but these weird one-off apps, I don't know that they'll be well received, so I try not to do those. But I see a bit of both in that some people are trying to monetize, but usually those apps they're better built, they're more well fleshed out. They've actually got a solid footing under them. So, but typically people who are just doing a one-off app, most of the time those aren't trying to monetize, and I think that's in their best interest. Jordan says, let's take it back to the Chromebook days. I'm very interested in the new Android desktop laptop OS. I really enjoyed the Chromebook days. I'd actually forgotten about those until you brought them up. I made a lot of content about Chromebooks. And some of the comments that I used to get about how I broke their Chromebook, I broke their thing, I screwed up their Chromebook, because they didn't read the instructions. They skipped steps. They didn't bother to make sure that their CPU was compatible. I received hundreds, if not thousands, of comments saying that I broke their Chromebook. But I enjoyed some of the Chromebook stuff. I've still got that Chromebook, from way back when I made all that content. I think it's still in my closet in the bedroom. Let's see. The folks in California are thirsty, and Brace will go back to lurking. Tentative vendor meet for a cloud backup provider for large enterprises. He mentioned how they have moved to vibe coding like it was something to be proud of. Yeah, I agree with Forsaken on that too. It's very much something that people are proud of. And again, I think if a developer is vibe coding something to get a proof of concept up and working, I think that's fine. But for an entire organization to go to vibe coding for their backup solution, if I knew that I don't use an offsite backup, which I should, but if I knew that the provider I was using had switched to vibe coding, I would switch providers almost instantly. Jason says, my understanding with new Chrome OS is Windows 11 with AI, no thanks. I guess I'm not surprised by that, mostly because what Sven just said feels like all commercial OSs are going to implement AI. Yeah, and I truly believe that they're implementing the AI not so that people will use it, but so that the AI is there and present to learn from the people that are using the computers, so that they can get familiar with the processes that people are using. It's more, in my opinion, and I've got nothing to back this other than my own conspiratorial tendencies, is that the AI is there as a way to learn, not as a way to be a helpful tool, but as a way to learn how people are using the software, so that the companies that are implementing the software can use that data to make their software worse, because that genuinely seems like what has been happening. Um, we had talked about Windows 7 and Windows XP earlier. Um, like I really enjoyed Windows 7 quite a bit. Um, I didn't mind Windows 8. I preferred 8.1 when they switched away from the tablet implementation thing of the home screen. But I didn't hate 8.1. 10, I actually kind of enjoyed 10. I'm frustrated with 11 for all of the same reasons that everybody's frustrated with 11. Though I can say that I haven't had nearly the stability issues that a lot of people have had, and I feel very fortunate for that. The stability issues that I've had have primarily been, like driver issues from NVIDIA, for instance, or firmware issues with hardware, um, more than OS issues with Windows. Um, in fact, I've had more issues with Windows when I've tried to do the cleanup, whether it's like a Chris Titus Tech thing, and I'm not picking on him specifically. I've tried other cleanup tools as well. But I've had more issues after removing a lot of features than I did than I do rather using a raw version of Windows 11. I'm still frustrated with all of the nonsense that goes along with Windows 11 and their need to try to force you into using a Microsoft account. And I know that part of the reason they're doing that has to do in large part with data collection, but I also think part of it has to do with piracy. Like I've got licenses on all of my Windows installs that mostly came with my systems. I bought a couple of cheap keys a couple of times, but in fact, I just switched Mrs. DB Tech over to Windows 11 the other day because she was still on 10 and was having a lot of issues. And it was literally just this week we switched her to 11. And it seems to be going pretty well for her. That said, though, I do need to find an NVMe drive that is probably right here. Yeah. I actually need to clone her hard drive her boot drive over to one of these. Her current drive's 256 gigs and it is full. So I need to get her over. So I'm going to clone her drive over to a 1 terabyte here soon so that she'll have more space. Yep, they also need to know exactly who uses the computer by request IDs. That was kind of data collection I was talking about. To me, AI is commercial OSs is telemetry and spyware and steroids. Yep, I agree with that. There's a lot more hiding in the bushes. I agree with that too. Random question: with GPU pass-through and VM tooling out there, is AMD well supported? I've been using Windows with Hyper-V, sharing VM's utilization limits. I don't know, honestly, how well supported AMD is. I haven't had an AMD GPU in a really long time. I mostly switched over to NVIDIA back when the 2070 came out because of CUDA processing with Adobe Premiere. That was honestly my biggest reason for switching over to NVIDIA was for video encoding when I render videos. That being said, my wife has an AMD card in her setup, and she does a lot of gaming. She's got a 7600 XT, I think, with 16 gigs of VRAM. I think it's a 7600. I would have to double check that, but purchase history. So I'm going to look because I'm curious. Yeah, it's a an RX 7600 XT gaming graphics card with 16 gigs of VRAM. That's what she's using for her gaming setup, and it's brilliant. Like she has a game crash every once in a while, but not too bad. And it's been really nice for her to have that much VRAM for her gaming because her games look so good. And she's on an 3440 by 1440 ultra wide. The games look amazing on it. So to answer your question, Trojan, I'm not sure with things like sharing GPUs through VMs and that sort of thing with Hyper-V. I'm not sure. It's because most of the removers do breaking changes to the OS. Chris's tool is probably the best, but still allows you to do some bad things with proper warnings in place if you do them. Yeah, and I think one of the things I did was stupid. I should have just gone with the basic cleaning setup that he's got. But I selected some other things that apparently stripped out some of the features that I needed that just quickly resulted in me having to do a fresh install. That was my fault, not his app's fault. I was overzealous with what I was having the app do. Um, so, but again, like I've got local accounts on everything. Um, like the system I'm on now, the wife's computer, the computer I've got in there, both my laptops. Well, one of my laptops is actually still on 10. Um, Jordan says I'm still using Windows 10 IoT LTSC. Yeah, man, if you can get away with that, that's the way to go, man. Getting the long-term support on Windows 10. Again, I really liked Windows 10. But of course, you've always got to worry about, when will driver or the manufacturers stop providing driver support for a GPU, for instance, or whatever you've got plugged in that requires driver updates. How long until those drivers stop getting updates? Been using my GPU recently, mainly for gaming. I might have not had the full GPU experience because I kept using tools like Moonlight and have yet to use native. Interesting. Trojan, thanks so much for hanging out. Appreciate you being here. Always appreciate chatting. But we'll definitely, hopefully, talk to you next time. So I'm going to give a quick look over here. So yeah, I don't know, man. I think operating systems are just going to keep getting worse. I still don't know that Linux is going to be the solution that I think a lot of people want. I think it wouldn't surprise me at all, if I'm completely honest, if Windows or if Microsoft rather released their own Linux version. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Just because they would do something that would be like, here's an easy way to get into Linux, but then it would be just full of data tracking. I truly believe that would be one of the things that I can see Microsoft doing. The other issue that I see is that there's still a lot of things that Linux needs the terminal to do. For one reason or another, I can and that's something that I just keep saying is that Linux still needs the terminal for certain things, and the general population isn't ready for that. So I don't know that Linux is going to be the move yet. That said, if SteamOS ever actually comes out, I could see that being a huge thing for a lot of people, my wife included. Just because the only apps she ever uses is Steam and Chrome. And maybe Calculator sometimes. So if SteamOS were to come out with a good browser, preferably Chrome, or something Chrome based or Firefox, whatever, But if SteamOS came out and had good game support and good GPU support, I could really see that being a huge thing that would be really, really helpful to a lot of people out there that just don't want to keep using Windows. What are my thoughts on the upcoming Secure Boot certs expiring? Isn't there an update for that? I feel like there's an update for that. Secure Boot certs expiring. Oops. I feel like there's a fix for that. This is saying just update Windows, or there's a PowerShell thing that you can do. Secure Boot playbook for certificates expiring in 2026. It looks like there are solutions for that already in place. That said, I haven't looked into it all that much, if I'm completely honest. I can't imagine that they're just going to let it happen. I imagine that something will come into play that will get that fixed. Again, I don't know what that is necessarily, because I haven't looked a lot into it very much. But I would imagine that they would be doing something to fix that. They start expiring in June. Oh, that's what that was. Okay, sorry. There's a package delivered, and I wanted to see what it was. Thoughts on the new Linux vulnerabilities and how it affects the local self-hosting? I think if you implement the changes that are out there, and if you're cautious and you wait for your Linux distro to release a patch for it, I think it'll be fine. There was one recently that somebody screwed the pooch, so to speak, and released the information before distros had a chance to do anything, and screw that person for doing that. There's a chain of command or a timeline thing that happens by default for a reason. And I think people, they're just like, oh, I'm going to release this and let people exploit it before anybody can do anything about it. I think there's a special place in hell for those people. Jason says, I can see something like Bazite becoming the norm. I haven't looked into Bazite much, but I could see that. And will run on more hardware than Steam OS ever will. Valve can't support all the hardware. Valve just needs to do the Mac thing and the hardware thing to keep it tight. I don't disagree with that. I'd be curious to see what kind of a hardware thing they would release. I think their biggest struggle right now is NVIDIA, and NVIDIA open sourcing their drivers. I could be off on that, but that's my understanding anyway. Never used Mac. I guess the OS doesn't matter as long as you know what to do. That's true. I've always wanted to get into Mac a little bit, just because I like to learn new things. But it's hard to find one right now, and I'm stubborn and I'm impatient. So yeah. Explaining computers. Published a video earlier today talking about how to check your secure boot updates in Windows, Linux. Good. I haven't watched Explaining Computers in a long time, but he's got some good content that he releases. Explaining Computers, YouTube. Yep. Secure boot certificate expiry, Windows and Linux. Yep, right there. That's good. That's really good for him. People should watch that because he does a really good job of explaining this kind of stuff. So yeah, people should definitely watch that to make sure that their stuff is up to date and ready to go. Jason says, I switched because of the hardware, but the OS is okay. It's a good middle ground between Linux and Windows. I agree with that. You know, my big issue with Apple has been their gatekeeping. And I know that it's gotten better. And I understand why they do it, but it's, you know, like you can run our software the way we say that you can run our software. I hate that. I hate that so much. Um, like for the longest time, iOS didn't have widgets. For the longest time, you couldn't build your own homepage. It was just like, here's a clock, swipe up, here's all your apps. Cool. I want to be able to control my phone that I paid my money for. And again, I know it's gotten better, but that was such a thing for so long that they're like, oh, look, we're so brave. We finally did this thing that Android's had for a decade. Cool. I'm not gonna take a step back in that regard. And I understand Apple is more secure because they control the entire thing. And like, I get all of that, but I'm not out here sideloading stuff. I'm not installing stuff very often. So it doesn't really affect me all that much. Are your servers turned off until the new Linux patches come out? I'm worried about next term. No, all of my stuff is on. In fact, I've got extra stuff on that I haven't had up in a long time. Like, all of it's on. There's one box down there that isn't on, but it's not even plugged in. See the light right there? That one's on. That's the ZimaCube 2. The ZimaCube 1 is off because I'm using the ZimaCube 2. Like, all of my stuff is on. It's running. It's updated. All of my LXCs are set to auto update. I still manually update all of my Docker containers and that sort of thing. What is it specifically you're worried about with regards to next term? I'm curious about that. Any particular reason I still use Google search? Yeah, because it works. I know a lot of people like DuckDuckGo, or they like to use searching, their own self-hosted thing or whatever. I still use Google. When I like, if let's say I wanted to say, let's say I need a new key for a Kia Forte, right? Let's say I need a new key for a Kia Forte, right? Let's say for a 2010 Kia Forte, right? Because that's what I've got, because I really like my car. But anyway, because this gives me everything I need. There's sometimes I will get there'll be some nonsense in there that's AI related or whatever, but I can scroll past it. Oh yeah, it helps if I spell it right, but I can just scroll past it and I can get to the results that I need. And I can go buy the key fob that I need, or I can buy the key blank that I need. I don't have any issue with using Google search. It works for me. It always has. I don't know. I guess there's your answer. Been doing daily updates on my Homelab lately. Patches are coming out daily for most things. It's definitely true. It comes out pretty regularly for updates. Let's see. Right, yeah. Right, Sven. I want to do what I want to do. I bought the stuff, yeah. And that's just it. Like, if I paid for it, I should be able to do what I want with it. Stick minus AI. Does that work? I've never actually tried that. Let's try it. Minus AI. Hey, look, put minus AI and there's no AI at the top. That's a tip I didn't know. Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate you sharing that. If next term gets compromised, then can SSH and most of the rest of the network? So I would say don't expose anything that you're worried about being compromised. Don't expose it to the internet. Like, I would never expose next term to the internet. I would never expose Portainer or Proxmox to the internet. I would never do that, because that just seems like a really, really bad idea. But everybody wants to access everything from everywhere all of the time. And it's just such a security issue that people don't know how to mitigate. Like, there is stuff on my network that I can access from anywhere, but no one else can. Like, you have to be able to be on my IP or my VPN's dedicated IP to access certain things on my network, or certain critical things for my finances. Um, there's just you should never make your infrastructure like that available from the internet. Like, it's super convenient. Don't get me wrong. I've done it. But again, I had it so it was only accessible from 2 IPs and nowhere else. And I would verify that before I would connect to it. Like, there's just things that you have to do in order to make sure that you're as secure as possible. Adding an intermittent or an interstitial, I guess, login page is a great way to do that. Whether that's using Tailscale or that's using something like Cloudflare tunnels. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. And I feel like enough people, or most people, don't do that. They're just like, oh, well, nobody's going to find my subdomain for my Portainer instance, or nobody's going to find my subdomain for my Proxmox instance. They absolutely will. They 100% absolutely will. And by the time you realize it, it's too late. So you should always lock that stuff down so that you can only access it certain ways. And not enough people do that. So don't ever make things public, unless you're willing to, or have the ability to, lock that stuff down. Yeah, look, there's always a risk. There's a risk when you turn on your computer that you've been compromised. There's a risk that when you turn on your server that you're going to get compromised. That's a risk you have to be willing to accept if you're going to self-host, or if you're going to run self-hosted apps and that sort of thing. And maybe I've just grown numb to it, I guess, over the 6 years that I've been doing it, which I know there are a lot of people out there that have been doing it a lot longer than I have. But you've always got to be careful. And even somebody said that they're updating every day. I don't even know if updating every day is the right answer. It definitely gives you the warm fuzzies of making sure that you're updated. But again, I don't know that it's the right answer to be updating all of the time constantly, because we've seen so many upstream things get compromised that make their way downstream in an update. So, you got to be careful about that too. With all of the AI hacking tools, it's easier than ever to be a script kiddie. You're absolutely right, Jason. Oh man, you had to ask. Can you do a tutorial for Hermes on TrueNAS? No. I am basically done doing AI stuff local. I think it's a complete waste of time. Trivy, there you go. There's Trivy and there's Gripe, I think, is the other one. They both will scan, and it's actually, those are both built into Dockhand. And I've got that enabled. And even though Trivy was compromised a while back, it's been fixed since then. But Trivy and Gripe, as soon as you said Trivy, Gripe popped into my brain. And I think it's GRYPE, I think is Gripe and Trivy. Yeah, there we go. Trivy and Gripe are both top-tier open source vulnerability scanners for container images, but they have different strengths. Trivy by Aqua is a comprehensive Swiss Army knife scanning containers, Git file systems, Git repos, and that sort of thing. Gripe is focused on sharpened blades specialized in vulnerability matching with superior risk scoring, often 30 to 40% faster. Thoughts on Chinese open source self-hosted stuff? I saw a music player the other day. Honestly, I don't trust it. That's, here's the thing. And look, I get where you're coming from, All Stars. I do. Here's the thing. Your monitor, your phone, your computer, your GPU, your Stream Deck, I'm looking around, your webcam, your laptop, they were all made in China, and if they weren't, parts of them were. Um, and so saying, well, something was made here, so it's bad. There's 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 just as much of a likelihood that something made here in the United States is going to have some sort of a backdoor in it as there is somewhere else, because that's where we are in the world. Like I made a video a while back for the Euro Office. When I made the Euro Office video a while back, um, I used C-File as the underlying file system manager for Euro Office because C-File is just quick and easy to set up, and adding Euro Office to it wasn't all that difficult. And the number of people that came in saying some indirectly racist things about C-File because it was a Chinese product. Everything you interact with is a Chinese product these days, because everything gets outsourced to China to be built over there, to be coded over there, to be manufactured over there, because the cost of manufacturing over there is so low. So it's I don't know. I have a hard time saying, oh well, something was made by this place at this location, this whatever, so it's inherently bad. Just bothers me to a certain degree. Yeah, Forsaken says, I'd say almost anything made these days has something from China in it. That's 100% it. So maybe that app has a backdoor in it. Maybe TrueNAS has a backdoor in it. Maybe Unraid has a backdoor in it. Like we don't. The idea that something has a backdoor in it or something is inherently bad because of where it came from is, honestly, I kind of feel like it's propaganda. And again, maybe I've just grown numb to the whole thing at this point. Sven says, I'm not sure that any producers are 100% ethical, and who are to say that Chinese made is worse than they're better than anything else? That's kind of my point. You just said it more succinctly than I did. My Homelab is running Debian 12, which I believe is approaching end of security support. Time to move to Debian 13, probably. And I need to do that too. A lot of my stuff is still on Debian 12 because I've had it running for so long that Debian 12 was the de facto thing to use for an LXC when I installed it. So I need to update a lot of my stuff from 12 to 13. I'm lazy, and I probably won't do it for a while. Have a NAS server in the UK. My brother in India wanted to transfer some files. We used Tailscales, but the speed was very slow. Can you suggest a service that paid or non-paid or affordable? I mean, if they just needed to send some files over, I mean, you could set up a Nextcloud instance, which I know sounds hypocritical coming from me, but you could set up an SMB or an FTP server and set up a non-standard FTP port and do it that way. I think that'd be an easy way to do it. I would probably set up an FTP server and map the folders to where they need to be, and map the FTP port to something other than 22. And if you can, make it so that only their IP address is able to access that port. That's probably how I would do it. I wouldn't necessarily want to rely on a third-party solution. Is it really propaganda? ? Like, would you use anything from Facebook? I use Facebook. Facebook's installed on my phone. Facebook Messenger is installed on my phone. Oh, you can't forward you to CGNAT network. That sucks. You could set up Pangolin, but Pangolin would require you to have a third-party like a VPS or something set up. I think you could do it with Pangolin, being Christie. That might work. You might like use zero tier Tailscale, Netbird, Pangolin. I think any of those would probably get it done as well. I know you said you had an issue with one of them being slow. But you're gonna have to try. I mean, I would definitely try one of those other solutions. Like WhatsApp for privacy. I don't use WhatsApp. In fact, I don't use any third or any other of those. Like, I think I've got Telegram on my phone from when I was trying out NanoClaw or something, but I don't use any of those third-party messaging apps. Would you look at doing a new traffic setup video? I hate traffic so much. I genuinely hate using traffic so much. Like, I understand why people like it, but in order for me to make it useful in my own setup, I would have to redeploy basically everything in my Homelab, and I would rather smash my little toe with a hammer than do that. I just traffic's one of those things that to me very much feels like you have to start your entire Homelab with traffic and then deploy apps with traffic in mind after the fact, or you have to then go back and deploy traffic and then go back and redeploy all of your apps with traffic labels. And I hate traffic labels so much. I was actually looking at doing a video about, there's a self-hosted Cloudflare tunnel dashboard that I thought about making a video about recently, like within the last few days actually, and realized that it uses the same labels as traffic, and it immediately shut down that whole thing. The idea of using labels to deploy things is so frustrating and so counterintuitive to how I like to run things. Again, it's fine for people that are into that. I just don't have the patience for that kind of stuff right now. Yeah, Parker says that's exactly how he did it. Yeah, traffic was a massive pain in the ass. Nginx proxy managers had some pretty gnarly security issues recently, though. So be careful with that. Nginx proxy manager security issues. I don't know. I'm hoping they were fixed. Looks like Lawrence Systems has a thing about it here. Yeah, like they've got a ton of CVEs. I know there's a different one, a different Nginx proxy manager, black or dark or something, that's supposed to be not as bad. There are fewer in traffic, and Caddy has quite a few. But yeah, no, there's a ton of or there were a ton of security issues with Nginx Proxy Manager. So be careful using Nginx Proxy Manager. Tried traffic or however it's spelled, it was a pain in the ass. Yeah, I hate it so much. In your world of reverse proxies, what's your favorite go-to? So my favorite, like, reverse proxy, I would honestly say is probably Pangolin. They've done a really good job with what they've done. That said, it requires having to use it without port forwarding requires having a VPS setup that is properly secured. So that's its own bag of worms that you got to take care of. So you got to be careful with that. Honestly, I use Cloudflare tunnels for all of my reverse proxy stuff. It gives me one dashboard to log into to manage everything. It lets me manage all of my security from one dashboard. It lets me manage, IP address and email access. It lets me do all kinds of things very, very easily from one dashboard. And I understand that that some people are of the mindset of, oh, well, you're using a third-party service, so you're not self-hosting, so you're a loser, get fragged or whatever. I don't care. I don't have the technical know-how that an entire massive team at Cloudflare has. I don't have the processing power to mitigate, a DDoS attack the same way that Cloudflare does. I don't have the wherewithal to implement all of the security features that Cloudflare has, and it's free. I don't care if they're doing a man in the middle thing on me and reading all of my data. I'm not self-hosting anything private enough that I give a damn about. If I'm self-hosting anything private that I don't want people to know about, I don't put it on the internet. So, if you're self-hosting something that you don't want people to have access to, don't put it on the internet. So I use Cloudflare tunnels for all of that. And I understand that Pangolin uses traffic, but I don't have to interact with traffic to make Pangolin work. Pangolin has its own dashboard that does all of the traffic nonsense behind the scenes so that I don't have to dick with traffic. I hate traffic so much, and interacting with their dashboard and getting all of their stuff to work the way they want it to work. Milo and Owen from Pangolin and their team have done such a really good job of making traffic easy to use with their Pangolin dashboard that I don't mind using it that way. What is the main reason for self-hosting locally? Is privacy a priority? Part of it's privacy. Part of it is saving money. Part of it is, and give you a perfect example. Like I said, I started with media hosting, but we're gonna skip over media hosting because I've got a Plex pass that would be like a couple $100 at this point. So let's talk about password managers, right? I think it's important that everybody use a password manager. When my wife and I got together, she didn't use a password manager, and that terrified me because she used one password for literally everything. One password. Oh, Sven, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. That's thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you. So she didn't use a password manager, and I was using LastPass at the time because I'd been using it for years and it was fine. And so I got her on LastPass. We paid for LastPass for her. I was getting it for free because I kept referring people to LastPass, and they would give me free months, like I think 3 months for free anytime somebody signed up under my link, right? So got her set up on that, and then they were like, oh, well, you can only have it on 2 devices. Well, cool. I've got a laptop, 2 PCs, and my phone. So that doesn't work for me. So I started looking into other solutions, and that's when I found VaultWarden or Bitwarden or whatever. And then shortly thereafter, like, oh, we're going to up your pricing, and you can only have it on 1 device. Cool. Get effed. I'm not paying you for fewer features. I'm especially not paying you more for fewer features. So part of it is absolutely privacy. I saw somebody say something on there about, if you're not self-hosting, it's on somebody else's computer. And that's true. And part of it is because you can. That's absolutely part of it as well. But if I'm self-hosting it, I'm not going to take features away from myself. If I'm self-hosting it, I'm not going to charge myself more to give myself fewer features. So a lot of it for me is that I got tired of relying on third-party services who kept jacking up their prices. Netflix every 3 months jacks up their prices and removes shows that I want to watch. Same thing with Hulu. It's like the basic plan with Hulu all of a sudden now has ads, even though I was paying to not have ads. So I don't pay for I don't have Hulu or Netflix anymore either. It's if these guys are going to make the experience worse, then I'm going to find a way to bring that in-house and make the experience better. So that's really my primary reason for self-hosting. Is part of it is saving money, part of it is privacy, but part of it is consistency, and part of it is not getting screwed over Also, LastPass was getting compromised like every other day. It's like, oh, here's another LastPass compromise where they stole 1 billion passwords. Cool. They're not going to steal my passwords anymore because I'm not on their platform anymore. So that's a big part of it for me as well, is the number of data breaches that I was seeing on some of these platforms was ridiculous. And I got tired of getting an email saying, hey, your data was compromised again. You know, the last time I got one of those is I don't remember. And it's not to say that I haven't been compromised, because I absolutely have been compromised. I caught it in time though, and I was able to fix it and mitigate the situation. But that's because the person who compromised me was stupid the way they did it, and they email bombed me. And the first email I got was saying that I had signed up for Audible through Amazon, and I was like, no, I didn't. What the hell? And after I opened that email, I got like 100 emails, and I got 100 emails, and I got 200 emails, I got 500 emails. And I was like, okay, well, cool. Something has gone terribly, terribly wrong, and I was able to get ahead of it and get it fixed. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons that I self-host. So I hope that answers your question. I also I don't have any open ports on my network either. Parker says, I also don't have any open ports, so it's just so I can run domains. It's not super critical, just convenient and great to learn about. Yeah, I use Cloudflare tunnels for that. I've got no open ports. So that's that I don't have to worry about that either. I use a lot of separate LXCs, which makes labels impossible. There's that as well. Maybe Pangolin is good at that. Pangolin's a great alternative for that, because you can set up whatever their agent is on its own LXC, and then point to all of your different IP addresses and ports, just like you can with Nginx Proxy Manager. That's what I love about Pangolin, is it lets you do that. I don't pay for any TV movie service. Haven't for years now. Plex is the best. And best is relative. I like Plex. My family likes Plex. A couple of my friends like Plex. Jellyfin is great. I used MB for a while, but for my needs, Plex is what I prefer to use. You don't jack up prices for yourself? ? It's how I manage my second personality can afford to buy new toys, right? Amazon is the same. I signed up for the no advertisement. Now I have to pay again to get what I paid for. My time is precious. Yeah, 100%. I use Vault Warden as my password manager, and it's been great for years. Or Bitwarden or whatever, man. I think it's whatever the locally hosted version is. Are you comfortable not being sure your self-hosted apps have a backdoor? Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with that at this point. Yeah, no, Pangolin's great. Again, like, you can use it as just a standard reverse proxy like Traffic or Nginx Proxy Manager or whatever. But if you don't want to have ports open on your system, you can set up a VPS, through RackNerd or wherever, and install the software there, and then install an agent locally, and then it uses a tunneling service to actually make the connections, and then there's no port. You don't have to open any ports that way. And I used it for a while, but my mental health took a dive, and I wasn't able to stay up on keeping, doing updates and that sort of thing in a way that made me feel comfortable. So I decided to go back to Cloudflare tunnels because they manage all of the updates for me. I've got a couple of local tunnels set up. I can update them when I need to. It just keeps all of my stuff really, really convenient. I believe you're correct. Bitwarden is the paid version. Vault Warden is the self-hosted. Yeah, I couldn't remember. I think I've got the Bitwarden plugin in my browser to connect to my Vault Warden instance, and I've just been using that for the last few years, and it's been really, really, really convenient and free, and that's been a big plus for me. I know that there are some people that also have a Bitwarden account that they will back up their Vault Warden instance to, which I don't necessarily hate. But all of my LXCs and VMs get backed up every day. So I don't worry about it too much. So yeah, no, I'm a super big fan of using Vault Warden for my password manager, and there are others. I couldn't name any of them off the top of my head at this point, but I know that there are others that people do like to use for different reasons, and more power to them if that's what they want to do. Um, so yeah. Um, have an open port for remote Plex users. Everything else is Cloud for tunnels or Tailscale. That's fair. With Plex Pass, you don't have to do that at all. With Plex Pass, you actually don't have to open any ports, which I really love. How does Vault Warden sync? Like I've got the app on my phone and in my browser, and it just connects to my domain, and it just auto syncs every once in a while. Or like on my phone, I can like swipe down and it'll auto sync that way. Vault Warden requires an HTTPS access or URL. So if you can do that locally, then you don't necessarily need to do that. But Vault Warden does require HTTPS to work properly. Yep, and Cloudflare tunnels are perfect to easily get that up and running, especially as a newbie. Yep, I 100% agree with that. And that's again one of my favorite apps that just runs in the background that does so much heavy lifting, and I don't even think about it. I update it periodically. It just works. And it keeps my wife using a different password on her different accounts, even though she bitches about it sometimes, because it sucks to have a different password for absolutely everything. And I get that. But because of people out there being really shitty, that's what you got to do sometimes, is you got to do things to make their job harder. VPS is required. You don't have to use Pangolin, but you can. Yeah, Cloudflare Tunnels does have that 100 megabit or megabyte limit, and that sucks. I agree with that. Jason says he uses Bitwarden. It's $10 a year, and that's honestly not a bad price. $350 Canadian for the price tag for lifetime Plex Pass frustrates. I don't blame you. I genuinely look. I probably at this point wouldn't have it if they hadn't comped one to me because I asked them to. I wanted to make a video about about their music player add-on for Plex, and it required having Plex Pass. And I was like, hey, I don't want to pay for it, but I want to make this video. Will you give me like a temporary one? And they just comped me a lifetime Plex Pass, which I didn't realize for like a year and a half, because I made the video and I went back to using MB, and then one day I was having issues with MB, and I was like, well, I'll just go look at Plex. And I logged into my Plex account and realized I had a Plex Pass, and I was like, well, that solves that. Again, superior is a relative term. I don't think Jellyfin has the same user interface for TVs and that sort of thing. And all of my TVs have Plex on it. My phone has Plex on it. My tablets have Plex on it. And I don't know that Jellyfin has that level of compatibility across all the different devices that I want to use it on. Yeah, started out using Jellyfin, but didn't like the app that was available on TV and Xbox. There you go. Password manager mandatory these days. I agree with that. I don't have a clue what 90% of my own passwords are. And yeah, and I always try to go as close to whatever the maximum is. Like I've got a couple of apps, for like, so I've got one of those, I've got a aftermarket car stereo that's got a big screen on it. And there's an app that goes with it, so I can actually, it's basically low jacked my car so that I can keep track of where my car is on an app on my phone, which is great, except that the password doesn't allow for special characters, only numbers and letters, and that pisses me off to no degree. Just super frustrating that that an app would have a password that doesn't allow any kind of special characters. Blows my mind. Jellyfin TV app is awesome now with Dolby Vision. Plex has got it, HDR, Dolby Atmos, the whole bit. Like I've had that on Plex for a really long time. But I'm glad that Jellyfin has that now, and I'm glad that the Jellyfin app, TV app, is getting better. I'm just at this point, there's no chance I'm going to switch. Like even after Plex changed their navigation that pissed off the entire world, I've gotten used to it, just like I knew I would, even though I bitched about it for days. It's still in my opinion, for my use case, it's the superior app. Yep, some people like Plex and some like Jellyfin. I agree, Sven. You mentioned music players. I wanted to move away from Apple Music. Essentially, I have Jellyfin. And yes, it does run on my TV. No issue with that. Any recommendations for a self-hosted music player? No, not anymore. There are several out there, I think, still. There was one I used to really like. I'll have to look for it. Music. I liked Navidrome quite a bit. But that said, I made that video. Hold on, I'm trying to find out when I made that. In January of 2022. So I don't know if it is still any good, but I really liked Navidrome back when I tried it. Let's see, Music Assistant. I've never heard of Music Assistant. Music Assistant. Let's take a look at Music Assistant. I'm curious. Your music, your way. Their logo makes me think AI. I don't know why. It looks very much like it's like Home Assistant meets AI for music. Yep. Show Music is this the one that you're talking about for Music Assistant? Because I saw this, it's like that's Home Assistant's logo, and that kind of makes sense. They squatted it a little bit, but interesting. Music Assistant server. I don't know if this is the same thing. Musicassistant.io. So that's the same thing. I don't know. That said, I guess we still do pay for Spotify Premium, so we don't get ads, and we use that. That's it. Okay, and I understand there's been some controversy with Spotify recently, but there's controversy with everybody lately. Sven, yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Um, yeah, Jason says I pay for Spotify. I'm so into music, I couldn't afford it all, and that's kind of a big thing for me. And like I used to use Pandora back in the day, and I would just like let it start a station and just let it run, and I found so much new music that way. When I got together with my wife, she had been building Spotify playlists on her account for years and had like tuned them and tweaked them and that sort of thing. Um, and I hate building playlists. I genuinely do. Like I obviously she and I are friends on there. I grab some of her playlists and import them into mine. But I will just start a station based on a song I heard somewhere, or a song from another station or whatever. And I'll just let it play. And I find so much great music that way. And I think that's a big reason that I keep paying for Spotify. We keep, because we got the family account, is because there's so much good music out there that I would never find if I was like on Apple Music or Amazon Music or whatever, right? And was just buying albums or buying individual songs or whatever. I would never find the music that I love so much these days. That said, I know Spotify doesn't pay artists very much, so I try to go to shows. I try to buy shirts or merch or whatever from the creators or the musicians that I really like. Um, yeah, that's exactly it. Picking a song to listen to is annoying. I listen to the radio and let the DJ earn his keep. See, that's just it. I won't listen to the radio anymore. Like I don't, the antenna in my car isn't even hooked up. I will not listen to local radio. I will not do it. I would rather have silence than listen to the local shock jock and his morning show full of nonsense. Um, so it's constantly Spotify. As soon as I get into my car, I can either plug in or my phone will automatically connect, and I just whatever is on is on. I can switch stations on my Spotify account. Again, I understand there's been some controversy with some of the ads on Spotify, but I pay so I don't have to listen to those. Um, Yeah, Forsaken, I'm the same way. I used to listen to them all the time. Now I would rather use an ice pick in my ears. Weird. You can listen to sorry, something flickered over here. I was just making sure that everything is still running. Um, you can listen to the radio through an app on your phone. Some of the stations out in the UK are pretty cool. That's an interesting idea. I hadn't thought about doing that. You recently had a video about Dockend. I haven't watched it yet. What are your thoughts about Dockend versus Portainer for general container management? Parker, that's a great question. I'm really glad you asked. I've got another video coming out about Dockend because I switched. And I'm going to talk about that in an upcoming video. I switched, I think 90+% of all of my stuff away from Portainer, uninstalled Portainer. Portainer is no longer on most of my instances. Basically everything at this point is Dockhand. Um, um, big fan of Dockhand these days. Um, hold on. Yeah, I made a video about it. Lawrence Systems made a video about it. Christian Lempa made a video about it recently. I haven't watched his video, but you should definitely check his video out too. Tech Hut made a video about it. Yeah, like lots of people have made videos about Dockhand, and one of my next videos is actually me talking about my switch over to it and some of the migration challenges that I faced during that process of migrating over. Now, Doc, you're right. I do like it. I do like it a lot. And I'm actually kind of glad you guys kept talking about it because it finally pushed me over to doing it. I'm a super big fan of Dockhand at this point. Um, get, let's see. Radio died decades ago. Internet radio is okay. Um, is it not very complicated to move over stacks? So that's Sven. That's actually one of the things I'm going to talk about in my upcoming video. It depends on how look. It's easy if you know the trick. If you're using mapped volumes, it's dead simple. It just migrates over and it's great. If you're using Docker volumes, you got to add a couple of things to your Docker Compose to import it. It's not going to be a tutorial so much as kind of a brief overview of what I had to do to make it work. And I've actually got a container that has both a Docker volume and a mapped volume, so I can show both in one container. But yeah, big fan of Dockhand. It's really made things a lot easier for me. And it's actually eliminated some of the apps that I used to rely on, like Uptime Kuma, I don't need anymore. Watchtower, I don't need anymore. There's a couple I've got them all listed out as far as apps I don't have to manage anymore because they're all managed or they're all part of Dockhand in a different way. So it's really a pretty cool project. The video that I made about it 3 months ago was how to install it and kind of how to use it, how to set up the agent, the Hauser agent. And this video is going to be more about, oh yeah, there it is. It's going to be more about kind of my experience using it over the past few weeks. So So I'm real happy with it. Frog Wizard, thanks for hanging out. Appreciate you being here. Yeah, Watchtower and Uptime Kuma became redundant with Dockhand. So yeah, that's a little foreshadowing there for you. But that's kind of been a big deal for me because I had Watchtower on every LXC. So I've got like 15 LXCs. So I had 15 instances of Watchtower. I had 15 instances of Portainer. I had, so it eliminated all of that for me and really simplified everything I've been doing. So yeah, that video is coming out hopefully in this week or so, in the next week or so anyway. Like I said, I'm working on that script right now. And hopefully that video will come out soon. So, yeah, it looks like several people have are either testing or using Dockhand. So for Portainer, it's not even the aesthetic of it. They're moving, like their whole thing is very much more business oriented, and I get that for them. They're going very much Kubernetes oriented. You can absolutely still manage, your local stacks and that sort of thing with Portainer, but I just feel like for a simple setup like what I've got, Dockhand is a better solution for me. Portainer is still a great solution for a lot of people, but for my setup and the way I run things, Dockhand is just a better overall solution for me. So that's what I'm going to switch over to. And hopefully the video that I'm working on will show you why. So yeah. Borgstorm says I like Dockhand. I've still to really use it though. Yeah. I've been like I was gone for several days, like right after I deployed it, and everything's gone really smoothly. So I need to go through and do some updates because I still get all my notifications for updates and that sort of thing. So fucking hell. Hey dude. Thank you. But yeah, I'm a super big fan of Dockhand. Thank you for slamming that. But yeah, I need to go through and do some updates and that sort of thing. I like that it's also got Gripe and Trivy built into it that will give you reports on the containers you're deploying, that sort of thing. You can turn it on and off on a per node basis, which I love. So all kinds of stuff to talk about in that video. So yeah, that's coming hopefully soon. But sorry, I'm looking at. Yeah. All right. All right, guys. Well, look, I'm going to start wrapping this up. I think we've been at it for a couple hours, and my tummy is starting to grumble a little bit, which means I need to get in and get something to eat before I start getting lightheaded. I can feel that coming on too. But I want to thank everybody who hung out today. I want to thank Sven for the donation and the gifted memberships. Super appreciate you for that. Yeah, so thank you guys for hanging out. Really appreciate it. Again, new content coming this week. Some news coming. Just it's going to be more on topic than some of the other stuff I was doing there for a while. So thank you guys for putting up with my nonsense and that sort of thing. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Again, thank you so much. I really do appreciate you, and I'll talk to you again here real soon.